Marcus Johnson walked into Wilson's department store on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. The 17-year-old boy had saved money from his part-time job for weeks. Today was special. It was his mother's birthday next weekend, and he wanted to buy her something nice. Marcus wore his red high school hoodie and jeans. His backpack hung over one shoulder as he entered the store. The cool air inside felt good after the hot walk from school. The store was not very busy, with only a few customers walking around. Electronics section, Marcus said to himself, checking the store directory. His mother had mentioned wanting new headphones for her morning runs. Marcus headed toward the back of the store, passing clothing and houseware sections. Karen Whitley stood at her manager's desk near the center of the store. She had worked at Wilson's for 12 years and was proud of her recent promotion to store manager. Karen noticed Marcus as soon as he walked in. Something about the teenager made her feel uneasy. She watched him walk toward the electronics section. "Tom, keep an eye on the young man in the red hoodie," Karen said into her radio. Tom was the security guard who usually stayed near the entrance. "Copy that," Tom replied, though he didn't move from his position. Marcus reached the electronics section and started looking at different headphones. He carefully read the features on each box, comparing prices and quality. He wanted to get the best headphones he could afford with his $85. Karen left her desk and walked toward electronics. She pretended to organize a nearby display, but her eyes never left Marcus. When he picked up a box of premium wireless headphones, Karen moved closer. Marcus felt someone watching him. He looked up and saw the store manager staring at him. He smiled politely, but Karen didn't smile back. Marcus returned to reading the box in his hands. "Can I help you find something?" Karen finally asked, her voice sharp. "No thank you, ma'am. I'm just looking at headphones for my mom's birthday," Marcus replied. Karen nodded but didn't walk away. She stayed close, watching every move Marcus made. When he put one box down and picked up another, Karen moved even closer. Other customers in the section began to notice. An older woman gave Karen a strange look before moving to a different aisle. Marcus felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. He had experienced this before in other stores. He knew why she was watching him. "I think I'll go with these," Marcus said, holding up a box of mid-range headphones priced at $69.99. He wanted to pay and leave as quickly as possible now. "Where did you get that money from?" Karen asked suddenly as Marcus pulled out his wallet. Marcus blinked in surprise. "Excuse me? That's an expensive item. Where did a kid like you get that kind of money?" Karen's voice was louder now. "I've been saving for my job at the library," Marcus explained calmly, though his heart was racing. "I can show you my ID and—" "Put it back," Karen interrupted. "Now." "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus asked, confused. "I saw you slip something in your pocket earlier," Karen lied. "Empty your pockets right now, or I'm calling the police." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Ma'am, I didn't take anything. You can check my pockets." By now, several customers had stopped to watch. Marcus felt humiliated as Karen reached for her radio. "Tom, I need you in electronics. I have a shoplifter," she said loudly. "I'm not stealing anything." Marcus protested, his voice steady despite his growing fear. "Please, you can search my backpack. I just want to buy these headphones for my mom." Karen shook her head. "I know what I saw. Empty your pockets or I'm calling the cops right now." Marcus slowly reached for his phone. "I'm calling my dad." "Go ahead," Karen smirked. "Call whoever you want. You're not leaving until the police get here." The store grew quiet as other shoppers watched the scene unfold. Marcus stood his ground, holding his phone in one hand and the headphones box in the other. His hand shook slightly, but his voice remained calm. "I did not steal anything," Marcus said again. "Please check the security cameras. You'll see I just walked in a few minutes ago." Karen crossed her arms. "Security footage takes time to review. We'll let the police handle that. Tom, watch him while I call them." The security guard, Tom, finally approached. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. Unlike Karen, he seemed uncomfortable with the situation. "Kid, did you take something?" Tom asked quietly. "No, sir, I didn't," Marcus replied. "I'm just trying to buy a birthday present." Karen pulled out her cell phone and dialed 911. "Yes, hello, this is Karen Whitley. Manager at Wilson's department store on Main Street. I need to report a shoplifter. She turned away from Marcus as she spoke. Marcus took a deep breath and called his father. Dad, I'm at Wilson's department store. The manager is accusing me of stealing. She's calling the police. His voice cracked slightly at the end. Stay calm, son. Don't say much. I'm on my way, his father replied. A small crowd had gathered around them now. Some people whispered to each other. An elderly woman stepped forward. I've been watching this young man since he came to this section, she said to Karen. He hasn't stolen anything. Karen ignored her and continued talking to the police. Yes, he's still here. About 17, African American, wearing a red hoodie. The elderly woman shook her head and patted Marcus on the shoulder. This isn't right, she said. Marcus felt a mix of emotions, anger, embarrassment, and fear. He had heard stories from friends who experienced similar situations, but this was the first time it happened to him. Can I at least put my items down? Marcus asked Tom. Tom nodded. Sure, just stay in this area, okay. Marcus placed the headphones back on the shelf. He thought about his mother's birthday and how he had planned to wrap the gift tonight. Now he wasn't sure if he would even make it home for dinner. The police will be here in 5 minutes, Karen announced, putting her phone away. She stood tall with her manager badge shining under the store lights. I'd like to speak to your supervisor, Marcus said. Karen laughed. I am the supervisor. I'm the store manager. Then I'd like the contact information for your district manager, Marcus replied calmly. This seemed to bother Karen. Her smile disappeared. You'll get no such thing. You're in trouble, not me. 2 other employees watched nervously from behind a counter. One of them, a young woman with curly hair, looked like she wanted to say something but remained silent. Marcus checked the time on his phone. His father's office was just 10 minutes away. If traffic was good, he would arrive soon, maybe even before the police. Show me what's in your backpack, Karen demanded suddenly. You don't have the right to search my belongings without my permission, Marcus said. He had learned about his rights in his civics class last semester. This is private property. I have every right, Karen insisted. Tom looked uncomfortable. Maybe we should wait for the police, Karen. Are you taking his side now? Karen snapped. The front door of the store opened, and 2 police officers walked in. They spoke briefly with an employee at the front who pointed toward the electronics section. Marcus took another deep breath. He knew he had done nothing wrong, but his heart raced anyway. The officers approached. A tall white man and a shorter black woman. Is there a problem here? The female officer asked. Karen immediately stepped forward. Yes, officer, I caught this young man shoplifting. Marcus shook his head. That's not true. I just came to buy headphones for my mom's birthday. The male officer looked at Marcus. What's your name, son? Marcus Johnson, sir. The female officer's eyes widened slightly at his last name. She looked more closely at Marcus's face. Johnson? She asked. Any relation to Mayor Johnson? Karen's smile faltered for a moment when she heard the officer's question. She quickly recovered and said, That doesn't matter. I saw him slip something into his pocket. The male officer, whose name tag read Officer Davis, turned to Marcus. Is that true, son? No, sir, Marcus replied firmly. I haven't taken anything. I was just looking at headphones to buy for my mom. Officer Davis looked between Marcus and Karen. Ma'am, what exactly did you see him take? Karen hesitated. I'm not sure exactly what item, but I saw him make a suspicious movement. He put something in his pocket. The female officer, Officer Reynolds, was watching Marcus carefully. Empty your pockets, please, young man. Marcus calmly turned out all his pockets. They contained only his wallet, some change, a hall pass from school, and a folded piece of paper with headphone models and prices written on it. No store merchandise. See? Nothing, Marcus said. Officer Reynolds nodded. Let's check the security footage to clear this up quickly. Karen's face turned slightly red. Our security system is complicated. It will take time to access the footage. Tom, the security guard, cleared his throat. Actually, I can pull it up right now on the monitor in the security office. Karen shot Tom an angry look. That won't be necessary. I know what I saw. The crowd of onlookers had grown larger. Some were recording the scene with their phones. Marcus noticed and felt his embarrassment deepen, but he stood tall. "If you didn't steal anything, why were you acting so suspicious?" Karen demanded. "I wasn't," Marcus replied. "I was just shopping." The elderly woman who had spoken up earlier stepped forward again. "I watched this young man the entire time. He did nothing wrong." Officer Davis turned to her. "You saw everything, ma'am?" "Yes," she said firmly. "This manager has been following him since he walked in. The boy was just looking at headphones." More customers nodded in agreement. Karen's face grew redder. "Let's review that footage," Officer Reynolds suggested again, her voice leaving no room for argument. Tom led the officers toward the back office. Karen followed reluctantly, and Marcus walked behind them, surrounded by curious customers. The security office was small, with monitors showing different parts of the store. Tom sat at the computer and quickly pulled up footage from the electronics section. Everyone watched as the recording showed Marcus entering the store, walking to electronics, and examining different headphones. At no point did he put anything in his pocket. "As you can see," Marcus said quietly, "I didn't steal anything." Officer Davis turned to Karen. "Ma'am, the footage clearly shows." He was interrupted by a commotion from the store entrance. A deep voice could be heard asking, "Where is my son?" Marcus recognized his father's voice immediately. "That's my dad," he said. Karen looked confused. "Your father is here already." The security office door opened, and Tom stepped back in. Mayor Johnson is here. He's asking for his son." The color drained from Karen's face. "Mayor Johnson? Robert Johnson is your father." Marcus nodded. "Yes, I told you I was calling my dad." Officer Reynolds exchanged looks with Officer Davis. "I think we should all go out and speak with the mayor." They walked back to the main floor. Mayor Robert Johnson stood near the entrance, dressed in a sharp navy suit. At 6'2", he was an imposing figure. His assistant stood beside him, typing rapidly on her phone. When the mayor spotted Marcus, relief washed over his face. He walked quickly toward his son. "Marcus, are you okay?" he asked, placing his hands on his son's shoulders. "I'm fine, Dad," Marcus said, though his voice trembled slightly. Mayor Johnson looked at the officers and then at Karen, who seemed to be trying to make herself smaller. "Would someone like to explain why my son was accused of stealing?" the mayor asked, his voice calm but powerful. Karen stepped forward, her earlier confidence completely gone. "There's been a misunderstanding, sir. I thought." "She said I put something in my pocket," Marcus explained, "but the security footage shows I didn't take anything." Mayor Johnson's gaze fixed on Karen. "So you called the police on my son without any actual evidence?" The store had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching. Karen swallowed hard. "I didn't know he was your son, Mayor Johnson." The mayor's expression hardened. "And that would have made a difference." Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The store remained silent as everyone watched the scene unfold. Mayor Johnson stood tall next to his son, his calm presence commanding respect. "That's not what I meant," Karen finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mayor Johnson raised his eyebrows. "Then what exactly did you mean?" Officer Reynolds stepped forward. "Sir, we've reviewed the security footage. Your son didn't take anything or attempt to steal." "I'm aware my son is not a thief, officer," the mayor replied, his voice firm but controlled. "What concerns me is why he was accused in the first place." Tom, the security guard, shifted uncomfortably before speaking up. "Karen told me to watch him as soon as he walked in, before he even reached the electronics section." Mayor Johnson looked directly at Karen. "You targeted my son from the moment he entered the store." "I was just being cautious," Karen defended weakly. "We've had shoplifting issues recently." The elderly woman who had witnessed everything pushed through the crowd. "That's not true. I shop here 3 times a week, and there haven't been any issues." This young man was singled out. Marcus put a hand on his father's arm. "Dad, it's okay. Let's just go." "No, it's not okay," Mayor Johnson replied, though his voice remained even. "This is exactly the kind of profiling we've been working to eliminate in our community." Several customers nodded in agreement. A few had their phones out, still recording. Officer Davis addressed Karen. "Ma'am, Did you have any specific reason to suspect this young man of theft? Karen's face flushed. He was looking at expensive items. So was I, said a white woman in her 30s who was shopping nearby. You didn't follow me around or call the police. More customers voiced their agreement. Karen looked increasingly uncomfortable. Just then, a man in a suit hurried into the store. I'm James Wilson, the district manager. What's happening here? Mayor Johnson turned to face him. Mr. Wilson, your store manager falsely accused my son of theft and called the police on him without any evidence. James Wilson looked alarmed. Mayor Johnson, I'm so sorry about this misunderstanding. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Marcus said quietly. She followed me from the moment I walked in and wouldn't let me buy the headphones I came for. The district manager looked at Karen, whose face had gone pale. Is this true? Before Karen could answer, Officer Reynolds spoke up. The security footage confirms the young man's story. He did nothing suspicious. James Wilson ran a hand through his hair, clearly distressed. Mayor Johnson, please accept my deepest apologies. This is not how we train our staff to behave. Apologies are a start. The mayor replied. But what actions will you take to ensure this doesn't happen to anyone else's child? The crowd murmured in approval. Marcus stood tall beside his father, no longer looking embarrassed but proud. We will address this immediately, James Wilson promised. Karen, we need to talk in my office. Karen looked at the ground. Yes, sir. Officer Davis turned to Marcus. Young man, you handled yourself very well in a difficult situation. Many teenagers would have lost their temper. My parents taught me how to respond in situations like this, Marcus replied. Stay calm, know your rights, and call for help. Mayor Johnson placed his hand on his son's shoulder. I just wish you didn't have to use those lessons. James Wilson stepped forward again. Marcus, please select any headphones you'd like. They're on the house, though I understand if you prefer not to shop here again. Marcus thought for a moment, then shook his head. Thank you, but I'd rather pay for them. I saved up my own money. The customers around them nodded in respect. Even in this situation, Marcus showed integrity and dignity. Very well, James said, clearly impressed. But I insist on giving you our employee discount at the very least. Officer Reynolds smiled at Marcus. If you're ready to make your purchase, we can escort you to ensure there are no further issues. As they walked toward the checkout counter, the crowd of customers parted. Some patted Marcus on the shoulder, while others glared at Karen, who was being led to the back office by the district manager. Mayor Johnson leaned close to his son. I'm proud of you, but I'm also sorry this happened. It's not the first time, Dad, Marcus replied quietly. And probably not the last. The next morning, Marcus sat at the kitchen table eating cereal before school. His mother, Diana Johnson, placed a cup of orange juice in front of him and sat down. I still can't believe what happened yesterday, she said, shaking her head. How are you feeling today? Marcus shrugged. I'm okay, Mom, just not looking forward to school. Why not? Diana asked, concern in her eyes. By now, everyone probably saw the videos online, Marcus explained. Some kids were recording with their phones at the store. As if on cue, Marcus's phone buzzed with notifications. He glanced at the screen and sighed. It's already trending locally, he said, showing his mother the phone. A video titled, Mayor's Son Racially Profiled at Wilson's, had thousands of views. Diana squeezed her son's hand. You did nothing wrong, Marcus. You handled yourself with dignity. Mayor Johnson walked into the kitchen, already dressed for work in a crisp suit. Instead of his usual cheerful greeting, his face was serious. The story made the morning news, he said, pouring himself coffee. My office has received dozens of calls already. What are people saying? Diana asked. Most are supportive, the mayor replied. But this isn't just about Marcus anymore. People are sharing their own similar experiences at stores around the city. Marcus looked up from his cereal. What's going to happen to Karen? I received a call from James Wilson early this morning, his father said. Karen has been suspended pending an investigation. I don't want her to lose her job, Marcus said quietly. His parents exchanged surprised looks. That's very generous of you, his mother said. But actions have consequences. Mayor Johnson sat down at the table. Wilson's corporate office issued a public apology this morning. They're asking to meet with us later today. Do I have to go? Marcus asked. I have a math test. His father smiled slightly. Education comes first. Your mother and I will handle the meeting. Just then, the doorbell rang. Diana went to answer it, returning moments later with a concerned expression. There are reporters outside, she said. At least 3 news vans. Mayor Johnson sighed. I was afraid this might happen. Marcus, do you want to go out the back way? I can have Officer Jenkins drive you to school. Marcus thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, Dad, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not going to sneak around. Pride flashed in his father's eyes. You're right, but you don't have to talk to them either. I know, Marcus said, finishing his orange juice, but maybe I should. His parents looked at each other again. Are you sure? His mother asked. Marcus nodded. People need to know this happens even to the mayor's son. Imagine how people without your influence are treated. Mayor Johnson placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder. If you want to speak, we'll be right beside you, but only say what you're comfortable sharing. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood on their front porch flanked by his parents. Reporters shouted questions from the sidewalk. Marcus, how did it feel to be accused of stealing? Mayor Johnson, what actions will you take? Do you plan to sue the store? Mayor Johnson raised his hand, and the question stopped. My son has something to say before he goes to school. Please listen respectfully. Marcus stepped forward, dressed in his school clothes with his backpack over one shoulder. He looked nervous but determined. What happened to me yesterday happens to people who look like me every day, he began, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. The only difference is that my dad is the mayor, so people are paying attention. Cameras flashed as Marcus continued. I was scared when the police came, even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. That's a feeling too many people know. A reporter called out, What do you want to happen to the manager who called the police? Marcus thought carefully before answering. I don't want revenge. I want change. I want store managers to think twice before assuming someone is a thief based on how they look. Mayor Johnson stepped forward. My son needs to get to school now. My office will issue a full statement later today. As they walked toward the mayor's car, Diana hugged Marcus tightly. Your words will make a difference, she whispered. I hope so, Mom, Marcus replied. I really hope so. Karen Whitley sat in her small apartment, staring at her phone. The screen showed dozens of missed calls and hundreds of social media notifications. She had turned on the local news earlier but quickly switched it off when she saw her own face on the screen. What have I done? She whispered to herself. Her cat jumped onto the couch beside her, but even petting him brought little comfort. The events of yesterday kept replaying in her mind. The look on Marcus's face when she accused him, the shocked expressions of the customers, the mayor's controlled anger, and worst of all, the realization that she had been wrong. Completely wrong. Her phone rang again. This time it was her sister, Melissa. Karen, are you okay? Melissa asked when Karen finally answered. No, Karen admitted, her voice breaking. I'm all over the news. People are calling me racist. I've received threats. The store suspended me. What were you thinking? Melissa asked, not unkindly. Karen wiped tears from her eyes. I don't know. We had some thefts recently, and I jumped to conclusions. Karen, her sister said carefully, you need to ask yourself why you jumped to those conclusions with this particular boy. The words hit Karen hard. She had always considered herself a fair person, but yesterday had forced her to confront an uncomfortable truth about herself. What should I do? Karen asked. You need to make this right, Melissa replied. Not just for your job, but because it's the right thing to do. After hanging up, Karen took a deep breath and did something she had been avoiding. She watched the full video that had gone viral online. Seeing the incident from an outside perspective was painful but necessary. The video captured everything: her following Marcus, the false accusation, the arrival of the police, and finally, the mayor. The comments beneath the video were brutal. Some called for her firing. Others suggested boycotting Wilson's department store. But among the angry comments, one caught her attention. It was from Marcus himself. I don't want this incident to ruin anyone's life. I just wanted to change how we see each other. We all need to do better." His maturity and compassion made Karen's shame even deeper. With shaking hands, she picked up her phone again and dialed a number she had been given during her suspension meeting. "Office of Mayor Johnson," a professional voice answered. "My name is Karen Whitley," she said nervously. "I'm calling to request a meeting with the mayor and his son. I want to apologize in person." There was a pause on the other end. "One moment, please." After a brief wait, the voice returned. "Mayor Johnson can see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. The meeting will be at City Hall, room 305. "Thank you," Karen said, surprised it had been so easy. "Thank you very much." The next day, Karen dressed carefully in her most professional outfit. She caught the bus to City Hall, ignoring the whispers of people who recognized her from the news. Her hands trembled as she climbed the steps of the impressive building. A security guard checked her ID and directed her to room 305. Outside the door, Karen paused, took a deep breath, and knocked. "Come in," called a deep voice. Karen opened the door to find Mayor Johnson sitting behind a large desk. Marcus sat in a chair to his right. There was also a woman who Karen recognized as Diana Johnson, the mayor's wife and Marcus's mother. Their faces were serious but not angry. "Ms. Whitley," the mayor said, "please have a seat." Karen sat down, her heart pounding. "Thank you for seeing me," she managed to say. "You wanted to speak with us," the mayor prompted. Karen looked at Marcus directly. "Yes, I came to apologize. What I did was wrong. I followed you and accused you without any reason except," she paused, forcing herself to say the difficult truth, "except for how you looked. My assumptions were wrong and unfair." Marcus watched her carefully, his expression thoughtful. Karen continued, "I'd spent the last 2 days thinking about why I did what I did. I've realized I have biases I never acknowledged before. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you, and for the embarrassment and hurt I caused." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Marcus spoke. "Thank you for your apology," he said simply. "What happens now is up to you and Marcus," Mayor Johnson said. "The store has their own decisions to make about your employment, but I appreciate you coming here today." 1 week after Karen's apology at City Hall, Wilson's department store called a staff meeting. All employees gathered in the break room before opening hours. James Wilson, the district manager, stood at the front with several corporate executives beside him. "As you all know," James began, "we had a serious incident last week involving racial profiling. This situation has made us look closely at our company policies and training." The staff shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone had seen the news and social media posts about what happened. "Today, I want to announce some changes," James continued. "First, all staff will receive mandatory anti-bias training starting next week. Second, we're updating our shoplifting prevention protocols to ensure they're fair and based on actual suspicious behavior, not appearance." A young cashier raised her hand. "What's happening with Karen?" James looked serious. "That's a personnel matter I can't fully discuss, but I can tell you that Karen's suspension continues while we complete our investigation." After the meeting, employees stalked in small groups as they prepared to open the store. Some felt the changes were necessary, while others worried about job security. Across town at City Hall, Mayor Johnson was meeting with his staff to discuss a new initiative. "The incident with Marcus has opened many eyes," the mayor said. "But meaningful change requires more than just awareness. It requires action." His team nodded in agreement. Diana Johnson, who had taken the day off from her job as a professor to join the meeting, spoke up. "Robert, I've been thinking. What if we created a community program that brings together store managers, security personnel, and young people of color? They could talk directly with each other about experiences and assumptions." The mayor looked thoughtful. "That's an excellent idea, Diana." "And I want to help," said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Marcus standing there, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Son, shouldn't you be in school?" the mayor asked, checking his watch. "It's lunch period, Dad," Marcus explained. "I walked over because I wanted to talk to you about this. I think I should be part of the program Mom suggested." Diana smiled proudly at her son. "I think that's a wonderful idea." Mayor Johnson nodded slowly. "It could be powerful to have you share your experience firsthand." Actually, Marcus said, I was thinking about something else too. He hesitated before continuing. What if we invited Karen to participate? The room went silent. The mayor's assistant looked shocked. Karen? Diana asked carefully. The woman who called the police on you? Marcus nodded. Her apology seemed genuine. And if this program is about changing perspectives, wouldn't it be helpful to include someone whose perspective has already begun to change? Mayor Johnson leaned back in his chair, studying his son with newfound respect. That's quite impressive thinking, Marcus. But are you comfortable working with her after what happened? I think so, Marcus replied. It would be awkward at first, but that's the whole point, right? Getting past awkwardness to understand each other better. The mayor turned to his team. What do you think? His chief of staff spoke up. It's risky from a public relations standpoint. Some people might see it as excusing her behavior, but others might see it as a powerful example of reconciliation, Diana countered. And that's something our community needs right now. After further discussion, they decided to move forward with the plan. Mayor Johnson would call Karen himself to extend the invitation. That evening, Karen was washing dishes in her apartment when her phone rang. She dried her hands quickly when she saw City Hall on the caller ID. Hello, she answered nervously. Ms. Whitley, this is Mayor Johnson. Karen's heart raced. Yes, Mayor? I'm calling to invite you to participate in a new community initiative we're developing, he explained. It's focused on addressing bias in retail settings and building better relationships between merchants and young people in our community. Karen was shocked. You want me to participate? Actually, the mayor said, it was Marcus's idea to include you. Karen sat down, overwhelmed by emotion. Marcus suggested this? He did, Mayor Johnson confirmed. He believes your perspective would be valuable, and so do I. Tears filled Karen's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it, the mayor replied. The first meeting is next Tuesday at 7 p.m. After they hung up, Karen sat quietly in her apartment, thinking about Marcus's unexpected gesture. The boy she had wrongfully accused was now offering her a chance at redemption. 6 months passed since the incident at Wilson's department store. The community program, now officially named Common Ground, had grown from a small group meeting in a conference room at City Hall to an organization that worked with businesses across the city. On a cool autumn evening, the largest meeting yet was about to begin at the community center. Over 100 people filled the seats: store managers, security personnel, teenagers, parents, and concerned citizens. At the front of the room stood Marcus Johnson and, surprisingly to many, Karen Whitley. Welcome everyone, Marcus said into the microphone. At 17 and a half, he looked more confident than ever. Thank you for coming to our Common Ground Forum. Tonight, we'll hear stories from both sides of the counter, from those who work in stores and those who shop in them. The audience applauded. Mayor Johnson and Diana sat in the front row, watching their son with pride. Karen stepped forward. She looked different from 6 months ago, less rigid, more at ease with herself. Before we begin, I want to share my story. Many of you know me as that store manager from the viral video. A murmur went through the crowd. Some people shifted uncomfortably. I made a terrible mistake that day, Karen continued. I followed and accused a young man based on nothing but my own biases. That young man was Marcus. She gestured toward Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. What happened next changed my life, Karen said. I lost my job. I received angry messages. But I also had to face something more important, the truth about myself. The room was completely silent now. I always thought I treated everyone the same, Karen admitted, but when I was honest with myself, I realized I didn't. Working with Marcus and this program has been the hardest and most important thing I've ever done. Marcus stepped forward again. When I invited Karen to join our first meeting, some people thought I was crazy. My own friends asked why I would want to work with someone who had treated me so badly. He paused, looking at Karen. But change doesn't happen when we stay angry. It happens when we work together to understand why these incidents occur and how to prevent them. A teenager in the audience raised his hand. Did Wilson's ever give you your job back? He asked Karen. Karen shook her head. No, and that's fair, but they did something better. They became one of the first businesses to adopt our training program. and last month they'd hired me as a consultant to help implement it. Applause broke out across the room. James Wilson, sitting in the back, smiled and nodded. We're not here to pretend racism doesn't exist, Marcus continued. We're here to face it honestly and work to overcome it. Every person in this room has biases. The question is what we do about them. For the next 2 hours, people shared stories and asked questions. Store owners talked about security concerns. Teenagers described being followed in stores. Officers explained how they responded to calls. Everyone listened. As the meeting ended, a local news reporter approached Marcus and Karen. You two have become quite the team, the reporter said. Did either of you expect that 6 months ago? Marcus and Karen looked at each other and laughed. Definitely not, Marcus admitted. Life takes unexpected turns, Karen added. 6 months ago was the worst day of my life, but it led to the most important work I've ever done. After the reporter left, Mayor Johnson joined them. That was excellent. You should both be proud. Thanks, Dad, Marcus said. By the way, Mom's birthday is next week. Want to go shopping with me for her gift? The mayor smiled. Where did you have in mind? Wilson's, Marcus replied. I hear they've made some good changes lately. Karen nodded. They have, and I know the perfect section for finding a gift. As they walked toward the exit, a group of teenagers stopped Marcus to ask about joining the program. While he talked with them, Karen turned to the mayor. Thank you, she said quietly, for giving me a second chance. That wasn't me, Mayor Johnson replied. That was Marcus. He saw something in you worth saving. Karen watched as Marcus talked animatedly with the teenagers. He's an extraordinary young man. Yes, the mayor agreed with pride. And thanks to both of you, our community is becoming a little more extraordinary too. Outside, the autumn leaves fell gently around the community center as people left with new understanding and hope for change.